G'day, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today, well, we're going to be looking at this. It's not a quadcopter, it's a pentacopter. So this is the Screamer from Foxtech FPV, and the reason this is kind of cool is because look at this. It's got this big motor on the back. So this is part one of the review. What we're going to do, we're going to stick it on the bench, we'll have a look at everything that it comes with and break it down, sort of tear it apart and look at its components. And then in part two, we'll take it out to the field and see just how fast this thing is meant to go, because it has a pretty big motor here on the back, so should be very, very interesting. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling, let's stick it on the bench and check it out. Rightio, so here it is on the bench, and straight off the bat, actually this antenna doesn't come with it, I should take this antenna off. Actually, so rightio, straight off the bat, here it is. You can see that it looks very, very different to most quads that we're used to on this channel. Well, it's not even a quad, actually. It's like a pent, I don't even know what to call it. But you can see the main characteristic at the back here, you have this massive motor at the back, which is going to be pumping out a lot of thrust. And then you've also got a bit of a V-tail here at the back as well, because if they were flat, you would be finding your props and, well, these two props would be hitting each other. Anyway, but just looking at the outside of the frame and I guess the quadcopter as a whole, the first thing I notice is it feels kind of heavy. So let's weigh it and see how much the whole thing comes in at. It's coming in, turn my scales on, and it's coming in at 445 grams. So that's, it's not the lightest quad, it's also not the heaviest. Look, I have seen heavier, but it definitely feels like it's got a bit of weight to it. You can see we've got our flight controller here in the middle. This one actually didn't come with a receiver. I have to get a different receiver for this and put it in and bind it up to my Tyrannus. We've got some, our ESCs are on the arms. We've got our four motors on the outside, which, what are these motors? 2205, 2300 kVs. On the back here, we have a 2208, 2500 kV motor. You've got your, this is something we'll talk about as well. It's a little bit sketchy. You've got your VTX on the side here. Now that is an RP SMA VTX. And at the front, we've got our tiny little FPV camera. So I have some reservations about that as well. And it's worth noting too, I didn't get any documentation that came with mine. This is pretty much just how it turned up, so I have no idea about the specs, but what we'll do, we'll pull it apart and find out as many details as we can. So doing that, let's take the props off and let's have a look at the motors first. Man, check this out. Just before I do that, I didn't even notice my wife just bought me in a cup of tea and like a scone. She's the best. Woot woot. Now, one good thing about this, the props they are using are some Dow tri-blade props, and they're the 5045s. They're pretty severe props, so luckily these are 2205 motors, so they should be able to cope with those, but it's good to see they're using some high-quality props, because these props are very resilient, and I know a lot of people who fly with these. These look like the V1 versions of the tris. Now, something I did notice, they come with reverse and I guess your standard thread, so I really wish that they all went with the standard thread, because I find it really annoying when people use reverse threads and sort of mix and match. Just put them all reverse. They never come off anyway, because we're all using lock nuts. And when I was trying to undo these, actually, it was a little bit difficult to grab the motor, because you don't have very much purchase just here, because it is protected by this prop guard. So I don't even know if that prop guard actually needs to be there. Actually, it'd be great if you could actually slide that out. On first impressions, these actually look, well, I guess the bell casing looks very, very similar to an Emax motor. So you can see here they are side by side, and look, they are somewhat, the sort of, I guess, with the parts around here, around the outside, look very, very similar. They're probably, we'll have to do some different comparisons, but I do notice there is green on the inside of this Emax motor, and also green on the motor in the inside here. So it'll be very interesting to see if they do have the thrust that is anywhere near the thrust of these motors right here. Now, the motors are labelled Foxtech, and they are 2205, 2300 kV motors, and I think that's a really good choice, especially when you're going to be rocking props of this size, and especially a tri-blade and so heavy as this 5045. That's a pretty severe angle, so you really don't want the kV to be too high. So I definitely think that's the right choice and the right size motor, especially considering these props. Now, let's have a look at what ESCs are inside. So I'm carefully going to cut along here. Hopefully this will open up nicely. And we have, well, oh gee, okay. So you can tell someone's already ripped back the heat shrink just here. It's kind of interesting. I wish that was actually a little bit better protected. I wish they'd sort of heat shrunk that, but I guess they're not too worried about that. As far as I can tell, I'm not 100% sure what these ESCs are, so we're going to have to stick them on and we'll see if we can hook them up with the VL Heli Suite and see exactly what ESCs we're running and what amp rating they are. Now, the motor on the back is a little bit different. That's also branded Foxtech, but this is probably the biggest motor I've seen. This is a 2208 2500 kV motor. So this thing is going to, well, I guess the name absolutely screams, so that's probably why they call it the Screamer. And that is rocking this prop just here. This is a 5045 prop. So very interesting that they've got this one as a bullnose prop. Now, regarding the VTX we have right here on the side, I think this is a terrible place to put it because look how easy this is going to come apart. Oh, there we go. So that's all it's going to take. But here's what unit it is: the TS5828. So a very, very common one. This one's 600 milliwatts, and this is an RP SMA version. And you've got your little dip switches on the back. I think it's a 40-channel receiver. It says 48 channels, so we're going to have to do some investigating there as well. But what I do like is that it can be powered by 724 volts, just reading that. Anyway, I'm going to stick that back on the side, but I really, really worry, and I do think that that's going to just be ripped off in the first crash that this has, because there's going to be a lot of torque, especially when you have your antenna on the top. There's going to be a lot of torque that pushes that over. It's just simply going to break or rip off or get thrown into the props. Now, moving along the quad, we've got our XT60 on the side just here. Really, really common connector in it, but I actually do like it how it comes out the side. I wish it was zip tied down. I think that might make it a little bit better. Now, moving along towards the front of the frame, we've got this. So just wait till the camera refocuses there. Hopefully it does. Yeah, we've got our little FPV camera right here. And I don't know why they didn't use just like a HS117 or even an old like Sony 600 TVL or something like that. I don't know why they've stuck this little camera in the front because and it's also one of these vibration dampeners just here, but I really don't think that's going to be making much of a difference when it's moving around. I wish it was just hard bolted into the ground, because if you have a bit of a crash, and especially if you're rocking a GoPro on the top just here, and something rips off in one of your crashes, that's going to take your whole camera with it. And I know Bruce at RC Model Reviews, I think he actually did something and something snapped right off the board, and these cameras were very hard to repair or to fix some of the wires on. So that is a definite negative in here, this style of FPV camera. Anyway, let's open it up. And oh, actually, one last thing on the side here. If you do want to have access to your flight controller, you have a little right-angle USB port that comes in right here. So a very interesting choice. I really don't like it. I don't know why they didn't just spin the thing around, because I much would prefer to be plugging it directly into the board rather than using this right angle, because it's putting a lot of pressure on the flight controller inside. Anyway, let's open it up and actually have a look at the flight controller. There we go. Alright, so that was a bit of a mission, especially these back bolts right here, and I guess like not nice if you want to take the top plate off, but at least they're using these bolts that go all the way through. So I think that's a good choice because it makes it very, very strong. So I'll put that to the side. Let's take the top plate off. Oh, almost pulled the camera off, and have a look inside. Now, you're going to have to bear with my mess here. Now, what you need to notice, if you're using in order to use this with your radio, what you actually need is one, like an S-bus here, or some sort of output where you can talk to your normal flight controller like a normal quad, and then another one directly relating on another separate channel. So this one on channel 6 is running straight to this ESC that controls this motor here. So some things are a little bit different. I know if you don't have one of these receivers, it can be a little bit tricky trying to get it all bound up, because one is going to be running a totally different channel controlling this motor, and the rest of your inputs are going to be going through the flight controller. Now, the flight controller that it's using is the SPF3, and that looks like a version 1, and here is the little right angle that I was talking about. You can see as you press in here, you are putting a lot of pressure on this pad right here. So I wouldn't be surprised if you press this too hard and you snapped off your USB port. So hopefully before that happens, you get everything set up correctly. Looking inside, and I don't want to move it around too much, it looks like it's been okay soldered up. Nothing looks too dodgy in here. Everything looks fairly straightforward. A little bit better than what it looked like on the ESC on the arms anyway. Now, while we've got this open, hopefully anyway, we can check the thickness of some of the frame parts. So the top plate is coming in at about 1mm thick. The sides are probably, I'm going to guess, the same. Yes, 0.9. And also let's see how thick the bottom is. It's 1mm thick as well, so not the thickest carbon around here. The arms themselves are quite thick though, and I think they're about 3 mils thick just from looking at it. So let's see what they're coming in as. Yeah, they're coming in at, well, 3 or 2.8mm, 2.9. And overall, this is a little thick bit of carbon as well. So some really thick arms, but I do worry about the structural integrity of, I guess, this bottom plate and the top plate. What does make it a little bit better is this carbon sits in the side and sort of makes it like a strong box shape. So that is going to give it a little bit of strength, but I still think that bottom plate, at least this bottom plate should be 2 millimeters thick. Rightio, well, let's hook this up to the computer and see what firmware we're running on our ESCs, so we can get some data on our ESCs and see what's going on with our flight controller. Alright, so I'm just going to plug this in and then I'll do a bit of a voiceover, and I'll probably have some screenshots because my computer is way too old to be doing any sort of screen capturing there. But so at least it's connecting. Let's see what we have. Right here, so I'm just going to type version into the CLI and see what version we're running. So this is running Clean Flight version 1.12. So it looks like that was done on February 19, 2016, so earlier this year. It'd be fantastic if these actually rock some Betaflight. I can't wait, because everyone seems to be flashing to Betaflight anyway. They should just come stock with Betaflight on them, especially a board like this one. But the important part, and the part I'm interested in, is let's find out what's going on with these ESCs. So let's fire it up, connect it to BL Heli Suite, and see how we go. Alrighty, well that's very interesting. I tried a couple of different I went back and had to try a different BL Heli Suite, like an old version, and I couldn't get anything to connect. And when I finally tried like 14.3, it could connect okay, but it was saying an unknown firmware, so it had no idea what firmware was rocking on these ESCs. So sorry, I can't tell you very much about the ESCs at all, which is a little bit of a shame because the BL Heli software and being able to flash them is pretty much a must in today's FPV sort of racing drones. After I finished filming this, I went back and did a little bit more investigating, and I found out I finally got it to all work, but it is rocking some DYS XMA 20 amp ESCs, so some pretty decent ESCs actually. Now, something I just noticed putting this back together, I think this FPV camera is actually just stuck on with a bit of sort of double-sided sticky tape there. So definitely that's a little bit questionable. So not feeling good about that or the structural integrity of this thing. Alright, so overall, I think this quad, the Screamer, does some things right and some things are a little bit just sort of underdone. So I guess in terms of what it does do right, I like how it's trying new things. It's got a motor at the back. It's trying the V-tail, and look, it does have some pretty thick arms, and looks like some decent motors on here as well. Not very much info on the ESC, sorry, so that's going to require some more further testing. Some parts of the frame look a little bit weak, and I really worry about how this thing is going to hold up in crashes, because if it's meant to go as fast as they reckon or they advertise, this is going to get ripped off for one, and I'm really worried about the FPV camera right here. I really think that's going to get ripped off as well. So some things look like they're going well, but there's also some big questions on just how this thing is going to go. Oh, and if you're wondering, this is just some duct tape I was putting on here when I was testing out just quickly with these antennas on. So there it is, there's part 2 of my review of the Foxtech Screamer, and a very, very interesting concept, and I really like people who try to sort of innovate and push this hobby further, but does this execute it well enough? Because there's some little durability questions and some things I definitely think could do with some improving on here. Anyway, there's going to be a part 2 of this where we're going to take it outside and give it a thrashing around and see how it handles with those with this extra motor on the back. Subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying! Actually, that's not good.